What's going on, you guys? Bring your friends here. I've noticed recently that there's been a lot of anger about Mesmer. People throwing out their opinions, although they don't really know how to change Mesmer for the better or in a balanced way. So I'm here to give you a video suggesting nerfs and changes that Mesmer desperately needs. And if you're here to just, hopefully watch me just crap all over the class and delete it for the game, you're in the wrong place. But if you're here to listen to me talk about nerfs and changes to Mesmer in a balanced way, then you're in the right place. So I've made a list. I'm just going to go from top to bottom. Axe first. The only change I made to Axe is Axe as a Symmetry, which is right now with Axe, it's basically 6 player confusion and 1 clone confusion. And the way I want to change it is player confusion has reduced from 6 to 2, and clone confusion has been increased from 1 to 2. So what does that mean? So right now it means that if you were to access Symmetry by yourself, you would only get 6 confusion, and adding 1 confusion per illusion with a grand total of 9. So basically what I've done is I've put a lot more emphasis on how much clone confusion it does with decreased amount of player confusion. So for example, if you were to, with my change, 2 player confusion and 2 clone confusion, you would get a grand total of 8 maxed with max clones. But if you were to it's basically a prerequisite to have max illusions in order to do roughly the same amount of damage as now. So now it's kind of just more, as long as you get the Axis of Symmetry off, you do the majority of the damage. But I feel that if they're going to include the clone confusion in the skill, they might as well add more emphasis on the clone confusion. Not to mention there's a part of counterplay with it as well, because if you have all of your clones out and you do Axis of Symmetry, they can still be cleaved out, and you would basically almost do little to no damage if there's quite a bit of cleave. So that way I feel Axis of Symmetry would be in line. And I lied. There's 2 axe changes, and then the other one is Imaginary Axis. So out of all the ambush skills in the game, Imaginary Axis is the only one that you don't have to be aiming at your target in order for the axis to seek out your target. So for example, if I'm running away from this guy and I hit my ambush and attack, the axis, even if I'm not even facing him, they'll still go and seek him out, right? Doing the ambush ability. So what my suggestion is, axe needs to, the ambush skill, you have to be facing them at the time you cast the ambush for the axis to actually seek your target. So the way it is right now, it's basically, even if you just hold the ambush and hit 1, you'll automatically face your target and do it, which is fine. I want that to stay in the game. But what I don't want is for you to actively run away from your target and just be spamming your axes and then have them automatically seek your target. I think that's stupid. It's lazy, and it just promotes this defensive type of playstyle that I really don't like. So keep Imaginary Axis the same, except have a prerequisite that you have to be facing your target when you actually activate the skill in order for the axis to actually seek your target. Alright, moving on. Traitlines. Domination. Confounding Suggestions. Dazing an opponent now causes the stun to revert to the previous version of the skill. So, long story short, I want Confounding Suggestions to be back to the way it was. The reason why they nerfed this skill to begin with was because of Mantra Distraction, which is right here, which had unbelievable amount of synergy with Confounding Suggestions, which converted a daze to a stun. And back then, before they nerfed this skill, Mantra Mesmers were just absolutely going like mad. So now you're asking, well, if they do that, won't Power Lock be the exact same thing? And the answer is no. I actually changed Power Lock as well. I wanted to stick to, the whole thing of the list, but long story short, I changed Power Lock to, instead of daze, it's a second of chill. So it no longer interacts with Confounding Suggestions. And I don't really feel like the whole way of them balancing the skill was really bad, because instead of actually going after the root of the problem, which was power lock, instead they just went after the trait, which more than one, like, power builds also got nerfed by this, which was not really fair to power Mesmer. I just don't really get that type of mentality when it comes to balance. Like, I don't know, I just think it's really stupid. Like, instead of nerfing the ammo, they nerfed the gun. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, go after the root of the problem. So therefore, I think Mantra Distraction should be a second of chill instead of second of daze, and therefore it won't interact with Confounding Suggestions, and therefore other power builds can actually benefit from Confounding Suggestions even if you aren't running the mantra. So that's that. So moving on, Egotism. Right now, Egotism, personally in my opinion, and this is all just PvP related, this isn't World v World or PvE, Egotism is trash. No one's ever going to use this skill, especially when it's competing with Shattered Concentration, one of the, in my opinion, one of the most important, you know, traits in the game, especially in Dom. So I've changed the skill completely. Instead, the activation times of your mantras have been reduced by 1 second. So this is just giving some love to mantras in which they have seen none. So instead of, what is it, 2 1/4 second time activation, it would be 1 1/4 second time activation. So you would still have a 1/4 second window to, you know, interrupt this skill. Like, say if they're Mirage and they're just like evading and casting the mantra. So I mean, if they want to cast 2 dodges to get a successful channel of their ability, I feel that's worth it. So not to mention the fact that if you're running maybe Chaos, you get stabbed, blah 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 blah. But I feel that that change to giving your activation time on your mantras a second less is enough to compete with Shattered Concentration in terms of the importance of said trait. Moving on to Dueling. Let's see, Desperate Decoy. Personally, I'm never a fan of health threshold traits. I think it's stupid. I think it's lazy. And what I did to it was, where's it at? I lost it. Here we go. Desperate Decoy. Instead of activating off a health threshold, it now activates when you use Shatter Distortion. Cooldown increased from 40 to 50 seconds. So now, instead of just waiting for your opponent to just blow you into oblivion, now whenever you hit Distortion, you can now force trigger Desperate Decoy, which I think is cool because it gives the player the ability to actually use it in possibly an offensive situation as well as a defensive one. Not to mention the fact that I increased the cooldown by 10 seconds from 40 to 50. So, I don't know. I think that would be an awesome change. And again, I'm just not a big fan of anything passive for the most part. Evasive Mirror. Right now, Evasive Mirror is reflect projectiles after a successful evasion. I think this is absolute garbage. And the reason why is you don't even really have to think about using the skill. Obviously, the main point is to evade attacks on Mesmer anyways, so you're just going to be getting Evasive Mirror at all times. And 2 seconds of it, mind you. So, in games, this is pretty much anybody who has Dueling trait and Evasive Mirror, this is up just like 90% of the time, which is absolute trash. Like, more than half of the things in this game are projectiles, so it literally just cucks anything out of a attempt to even touch you, which I think is just mind-blowingly stupid. So now I've changed to mirror, Evasive Mirror, so after a successful heal, gain Mirror for 3 seconds, cooldown 15 seconds. So after you cast any heal, you gain Mirror for 3 seconds with a cooldown of 15. So you cannot use this with Mantra Recovery, just because I think the uptime on that would just be a little bit too overboard. So with things like heal, you would get 5 seconds of Mirror on this one specifically, which I think would be, you know, it's like decent uptime on Mirror if you were to just go down the route of Mirror. And then everything else, you still have 3 seconds of Mirror after a successful heal. I also did indulge the idea of also giving you Mirror while you were doing your heal as well as the 3 seconds after the heal, but I thought that was a little bit too overblown, so basically I just stuck to the 3 seconds after you successfully heal yourself with Evasive Mirror. Going into Chaos. Let's see. Master of Manipulation is now moved to the Grandmaster tier, and Prismatic Understanding moved to the Adept tier. So these two traits, Master of Manipulation and Prismatic Understanding, they swap. So Prismatic Understanding would be here, and Master Manipulation would be here. And this is the reason why. So I essentially buffed Master of Manipulation. I removed the mirror altogether, because there's enough mirror as it is in this game, even with my suggested change. So Master of Manipulation is now, your manipulation skills are improved and your recharge is reduced by 20%. So let's go through it. Blink, Manipulation, gain super speed for 2 seconds after you use Blink. Arcane Thievery, Boon Stolen 4, Conditions Transferred 4, so it's just up from 3 to 3. Illusion of Life, the duration of Illusion of Life has been increased from 15 seconds to 25 seconds. And Mimic has no activation time, which ain't really that big of a buff to Mimic for this trait, but still pretty good. So, as I said, these two are to switch. Prismatic Understanding isn't really a threatening trait at all in Conquest, just because who gives a fuck about increased stealth when you're just decapping the point in general. Maybe people would choose this over Descent into Madness, but I highly doubt it. Descent into Madness is already pretty good, and it already activates when you use a heal skill, so it's not health threshold or anything, so at least requires the person to have a brain when they use it. So yeah, Prismatic Understanding here, Master Manipulation there, and yeah, let's move on. Inspiration. Illusionary Inspiration and Restorative Mantras, again, swap places. So Restorative Mantras is here, Illusionary Inspiration is here. And the reason I did that is I'm going to do the same thing that I've done to Master Manipulation. I'm just going to buff the skill. And Illusionary Inspiration for Grandmaster tier, I think is garbage. Like, the healing is very negligent. Like, even with, like, without an amulet, it's 127. Like, that doesn't add up to jack shit. So instead of asking to nerf the skill, I think it'd just be a better idea to hand the torch off to something else that will heal your teammates and just throw it down into Adept tier to compete with Medic's Feedback and Sympathetic Visage. So, and I'll get to what I changed with Restorative Mantras in a moment. So Healing Prism. Healing Prism right now is when healing yourself, nearby allies are also healed. Gain healing power based off a portion of your power. So what I changed it to is a portion of your vitality instead. So you're not pigeonholed into power to actually benefit from Healing Prism. It's pretty much needless to say that anybody going into Inspiration is going to have some sort of form of vitality to benefit from this. So as of right now, 13% of 1050, which is pretty much baseline of most amulets when it comes to power. Like, let's type in power. 1050, 1050, 1200, 900, 1050, 1050, 1050, 1050. So I'm basically just putting 1050 as a baseline. So 13% of 1015 is 136.5. So that's how much healing power you get based off your power. So with vitality, 20% of 560, which is pretty much baseline on most of the amulets now in terms of vitality, is 112. There's only 2 amulets above 560 vitality at 20%, which is Carrion and Valkyrie, which equals out to 180 healing power. So, in my opinion, that's not really a bad trade-off for the most part. I mean, it's actually a little bit nerfed. So, all right, moving on. Restorative Mantras, now Restorative Glamours. Allies are healed when affected by a Glamour skill. This trait can only proc once per Glamour skill. Base healing is still the same at 1770. So, as I said, Restorative Mantras is here in a Grandmaster, and now whenever you use a Glamour skill, whether it be Null Field, Feedback, Portal, which is trash, and Veil, you and all of your allies are healed for 1770, which is cool. And then Blurred Inscriptions, Siget of Humility, which is right there. Right now, it does, I believe, 10 stacks of Vuln. Let's check it out. 10 stacks of vulnerability, which is trash. Why would you... who gives a fuck about 10 stacks of vulnerability on 80-second cooldown? Like, you can get vulnerability pretty much anywhere else in the game. So my suggestion is applies 1 or 2 seconds of Immob instead of the Vuln. I honestly feel that's worth it if you're going to spec into a Grandmaster trait and then obviously spec Siget of Humility. Anyways, 1 to 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds of immobilization is not that much to ask for, personally, in my opinion. Mirage, which everybody has been waiting for. Infinite Horizon. So Infinite Horizon is when you use or when you gain Mirage Cloak, your illusions also gain it. So my suggestion to this, well, here's the reason why it's bad in the first place. One, it's basically whenever you're in a fight, you don't personally have to ambush the person yourself in order for your clones to also ambush them. So that's pretty much my problem with it, because you can play completely defensively or completely defensive while your illusions essentially just do all the work for you, and I think that's stupid. I mean, not to mention the fact that they also gain Mirage Cloak, which I think is a little bit over the top. So my suggestion to this is listen very carefully. When you use an ambush skill, your illusions also gain it. So what does that mean? One, your illusions no longer get Mirage Cloak. Two, you are forced to use an ambush skill in order for your illusions to also ambush. And three, since you can get ambushed through Desert Distortion, it would also activate when you use a distortion skill and not just a Mirage Cloak in general. So basically, in the end, you can essentially use Infinite Horizon more, but they no longer have Mirage Cloak, in which they can be easily cleaved and basically negate the skill almost entirely, which I think is a fair trade-off. So essentially, you're getting rid of the defensive mechanic by removing Mirage Cloak. You're forcing the player to actually ambush themselves for your illusions to also do it, which in turn makes it to where the player is not primarily playing defensive and just letting the trait do the work for the player. So I think that would be a great change to Infinite Horizon. All right, so moving on to Dune Cloak. Dune Cloak is essentially arguably trashed by the majority of the Mesmer community. Right now, it's use sand shards when you gain Mirage Cloak. Conditions applied to bleeding foes have increased duration. One of the reasons why this is crap by design is that you can't even get away defensively. Like, say if you pop stealth and you're about to be cleaved and you want to get out of there, you can't, because essentially by simply dodging, you're damaging the enemy, which gives you reveal, and now you're fucked, right? You can't even just be like, oh, I need to get out of here. Let me dodge and do that. Oh, I'm revealed, I'm dead. Which is, I don't know. I don't think they really thought it through when they made this into the game. So my suggestion is that, let's see, where's it at? Dune Cloak. Bleed foes around you when you use the shatter skill. Conditions applied to bleeding foes has increased duration. The damage portion of this skill has been removed. Condition duration increased is still the same at 20%. Bleeding stacks have been reduced from 3 to 2. So instead of doing it when you use Mirage Cloak, this now becomes a shatter skill, and the duration increase still 20%, and the stacks from 3 to 2, which I think is fair. Not to mention the fact that you can also make the skill a lot better. If you were to use like Siget of Illusions, you'd get, you know, double the worth out of Dune Cloak as before. It's like the difference between my suggested changes with Infinite Horizon and Dune Cloak. Infinite Horizon has damage and utility, but not, I would say, as much as Dune Cloak if this were to become a shatter skill. And the reason I say utility is because of sword. So say if you have multiple clones out and use your Mirage Thrust on an enemy, that can potentially get rid of a lot of stability, which can in turn line you up to CC your enemy accordingly and do a ton of damage. Obviously, and that's why it counts as utility. Dune Cloak doesn't really have that. It's just bleed on shatter and condition duration increased with bleeding from 3 to 2. So personally, I think that would make it in line with Infinite Horizon, just giving it a different twist on how you deal your damage. Moving down the list, utility skills. Illusionary Ambush. Basically, too long didn't read. It's too low of a cooldown for what it gives you, so I just increased the cooldown from 20 to 35 seconds. Moving on. Null Field. This ability is now a stun break. Out of every single deception, glamour, clones, phantasms, manipulations, mantras, and signets and wells, glamours are the only one to not provide a stun break. So I don't really feel that's fair. And the only one that feels natural to make a stun break that provides the most utility is Null Field. So I don't really see why not to give Null Field a stun break, especially since every single other utility category has one. I just kind of feel like it's unfair. Mantra Distraction, which is... did I miss it? Right here. So as I said before, instead of a daze, it's a second of chill, which I feel is just as strong as the daze. Not to mention that it can hit up to 5 targets, and so it doesn't conflict with Confounding Suggestions. And I think that's it. I think that's the whole list. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this video today. If you have any comments or suggestions, leave them down below. And yeah, I'm all for having a reasonable discussion in terms of balancing or nerfing or buffing Mesmer, but it has to be thought out. Like, please, you know, take your time when constructing your arguments in terms of like saying, oh, well, this doesn't need to be nerfed, or oh, this doesn't need to be buffed. You know, tell me why. You got to give me reasons. So, but yeah, this is Countless Bringer Friends. Hope you enjoyed, and I'm out of here. See you guys.